All of the videos that I have done on this channel are pretty much related to movies, but the nerd inside me is wanting to talk about the One Piece live action adaptation. There have been plenty of live action adaptations of anime. Hardly any of those live up to the hype. So when it was announced that Netflix was going to do a live action adaptation of One Piece, just like a bunch of other people, I was like, all right, well, good luck with that. That'll be really interesting. We'll see how that turns out. And out of all of the popular anime that is out right now, One Piece just seems like one of the more challenging ones to adapt in live action. The character designs are far more cartoonish than other series, and the powers and the fights itself are bigger than life. So yeah, and also it's a series that's been going on for like 26 years now, still going. There's probably like 4 or 5 more years left. If you are not familiar with the story of One Piece, to tell it simply, it is about a pirate named Luffy who is out to find this big treasure called One Piece, and if he finds it, he will be king of the pirates. This first season covers Luffy trying to find a crew and stumbling across some other pirates and fighting them as they go through this giant ocean called the East Blue. Now, I will admit that I am familiar with One Piece. I have seen about 100 something episodes. I have seen it all the way up to the Alabasta arc. I will probably watch more later on, who knows. And I've seen maybe 4 or 5 movies. So as I am watching this adaptation, I am aware of what could come if this gets renewed. But I am not here to do a compare and contrast between the adaptation and its original source material. I'm sure at some point I may mention what worked in this version compared to the original, but I am not here to just do a full thing of that. I'm here to just talk about what I liked and what I didn't like about this adaptation. But I will go ahead and start that somehow they managed to pull it off. It worked. And I think that's because this show is committed to matching the same tone as its source, which is staying goofy and a little over the top without ever really trying to feel out of place or trying to feel like it's something completely different. And that commitment is really what works for this show, whether it is from the acting, the production, costume, makeup, writing, storytelling. Let's go ahead and start with the actors in this series. None of the actors in here are big household names. They are all pretty small with minor roles in previous work. So for me, it felt like these characters came to life a lot more compared to if it were A-list celebrities. If it was stars that big, then I think it would have just been a little bit more distracting. I have to give a big shout out to the casting director because everyone that they casted felt very spot on for these characters. Obviously, that also has to go in with makeup and costuming, which I will get to later, but I do think these actors just do a good job on portraying these characters. But I will say that all of these performances are pretty good, sometimes campy, which can sometimes be a little bad in a way. The thing about voice acting and dialogue and emotions, and particularly shonen anime, at least from what I've watched, is that I find it really heavy-handed on being campy and over the top, which is not a bad thing. That's just kind of how they are. Sometimes that directly being adapted into a Western live action series may not translate as well, especially when it's out of context. I remember before I watched this, I saw one clip of a pretty iconic scene, and I just remember thinking it feels weird. They were doing everything that I'm sure fans were pleased with, but I was just like, this is so absurd. But after watching some episodes that were building up to this scene, it worked for me because I was used to this world, I was used to this writing, I was used to this acting, and then I was invested with what was happening. That tends to happen a lot. Out of context, certain line readings didn't make sense to the point where the performances may feel bad, but when you see all of the framework, their emotion, personality, their performance makes a bit more sense, at least to me. Ińaki Godoy plays Luffy, who captures the childlike wonder and kindness of Luffy very well. Mackenyu plays Zoro, who is a tough swordsman and doesn't show a lot of emotion, but the humor works well with his stubborn personality. Emily Rudd plays Nami, who is very cold in the beginning and has the most character development through this entire season compared to everyone else. Jacob Romero plays Usopp. I think Romero was pushed a little bit to the side quite a bit in this season. Obviously, part of that has to do with how Usopp was written in the manga, but he has a couple moments to shine, but for the the most part, he's just kind of there. I will say though, I think out of everyone, other than maybe Iñaki, Romero gets to show his personality a lot in this performance, so I think he gets to outshine everyone else in that way. Finally, we have Skylar, who is playing Sanji, a chef who knows how to kick. Skylar is very smooth and charming. It's not as obnoxious as Sanji is in the anime. It works for this. It's not as big. It's very calm. I liked it. So those are the main characters of this series. I think they all at least captured their likeness and personality very well, even getting to sprinkle in a little bit of what the performers are wanting to add to it. It does take a little while for the chemistry between them to come to life. You could argue that's part of their development. That's just how the story is written. But for me, at least in the first half of this season, it just feels like these characters pop up somewhere and then they try to get their way out of the situation. It's really not until episode 5 where these characters start to feel more comfortable around each other. That's not even all of the characters though. There are tons of other villains and characters that pop up in this season. I'm really not gonna go too much into every other single character, but I will say I liked them. Whether they are villains or parental figures, they are just types of characters that we have seen here in the States before. You have a grimy clown, you got a devious butler, you got a very blunt instructor. Even though we have seen character tropes like this before, these actors are able to bring these characters to life in a way where it makes them a little bit more interesting. Also, the way they are written doesn't entirely make them just character tropes. The way these characters are written and introduced is a little different from its source material, which I appreciate. For instance, the Bounty Head introductions are very cool. Seeing how they interact with that is entertaining, I guess, but that's not even really what I'm talking about. Obviously, certain characters were cut or introduced way earlier compared to the anime or the manga, but the amount of involvement with these characters just makes sense with how the season was played out. The writing converges interactions with villains that lead up to Arlong as being the big baddie of the season. It doesn't ever feel like just your typical villain of the week. There's enough teasing and build up to each single character. But I will say that the pacing is a little off in a couple episodes. It tends to lose its momentum at times, and some of those character interactions are not as exciting as the story may try to make it seem. So yeah, you can't have a One Piece show unless you have some weird pacing at times. I found the makeup at times really well done, and at other times just a little off. Arlong is a fishman, so of course there's tons of makeup and layering on him, and all of the other fishermen in his crew look pretty good. I'm not gonna lie though, it did take me quite some time to get used to him. It looked just weird, but shout out to the crew for not making these characters CGI. It's all real practical makeup. There's also Buggy the Clown, who just looks like a dirty clown. Even the actor that played the swordsman Dracula Mihawk had painted abs on. I wouldn't say it's like bad, it's noticeably fake. The thing that bothered me the most was Emily Rudd's wig. It looked cheap in my opinion. Unless that is her real hair, I would be shocked. All I will say is that this scene right here is embarrassing, and I don't know how this got to the final cut. I'm guessing this was the only good shot that they got, and I'm sure it was really tough to do, but also, God, it's embarrassing. But other than that, the production is pretty good. All the sets are practical, and sometimes scenes are shot with a wider lens so you can bask in the entire environment. Finally, let's talk about the action and editing, because it works. Is it the most exciting action ever? No, but it is creative on how they were able to pull this off. They use cuts to make character movement feel faster. Luffy is a pirate that can stretch, so a lot of times with Luffy they may show him throw a punch but cut before he stretches, and then it will just cut to the villain getting hit. It's just simple tricks like this that can help show the strengths of characters without having to go too crazy on CGI. They do show Luffy's stretching abilities plenty of times, and it never really feels weird, so at least it worked for me. There are many intense close-ups though, and majority of the time it doesn't make sense to me. Sometimes it is effective, sometimes I get it. I'm not sure if we're supposed to feel something from this, or if maybe they're just trying to replicate panels from the manga. I'm just kind of impressed they pulled this off and it succeeded. The live action adaptation of One Piece doesn't have the giant household name celebrities or a team that isn't very involved with writing genres like this, yet you can tell there is a strong sense of commitment from everyone in this show that it turned out to be good. The casting, I think, is very good. I do have to give a shout out for the makeup and the costume department because that certainly helps as well. I think overall the performances work. They fit this campy tone this series is aiming for. It does take a while for me to get used to that campiness. It also does take a while for me to buy the connections and the chemistry between the main crew, but by the end, they do a really good job on giving you a great grasp of the same major goals that they have. I think the storytelling has a natural flow. It makes sense to me despite there being some pacing issues. The editing and the fighting work really well. It doesn't ever make these powers feel distracting. There are plenty of changes that I'm sure will upset some people, and I get that. I think the changes make sense. It works for how the story is being told. If you were interested in One Piece, but you are too intimidated by the length of how many episodes there are or how many manga volumes there are, but you still want to like give it a shot, I say go ahead and start with this, see how you feel, make your decision from there. But if you are not a fan of One Piece at all or any manga, you can give this a shot if you want to, but who knows, maybe the weirdness will turn you off, maybe it will keep you interested. I don't know, just give it a shot and just see where it goes from there. If this gets renewed, and I hope it does, I just want it to stay weird. It sounds like it's pleasing the fans and it sounds like it's getting other people interested, so maybe after this we will see some other anime live action adaptations. I'm sure we will see a boost now. Will I watch this season again? Probably not, unless my wife wants to rewatch it. I am gonna give this season of One Piece a 3.5 out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching this. Did you watch the One Piece Netflix series? Do you like One Piece at all? Did you give up at one point? I am very curious. Let me know down below. If you like this, please like, comment, subscribe, share, do whatever. Make sure you exercise every day, drink your milk, and have a great day.